Prodigy Season 2, Episodes 205, 6, 7, and 8. You know, I do think these kids can steer. But are you a blown-away Prodigy believer yet?
Between you and me, Ensign, I need a second opinion.
Hey, it is Dr. Trek, Larry Nemecek, coming at you here from the heart of Trekland, letting the dust settle just a bit on this entire season, Season 2, of Prodigy, all 20 episodes. So, instead of a hot take or a quick take, you're going to get a second opinion from Dr. Trek. Hey, I have been writing, editing, interviewing, witnessing, hosting, archiving, dot connecting, commenting, and yes, fanning Star Trek for a while now. And I just want to say, wow, this season of Prodigy is moving right along, huh? So we have the Infinity, right? The experimental little science craft, the temporal craft that was Janeway's pet project to find Chakotay. And now here it is. The kids have stolen it, both to save it and to redeem themselves. And what happens along the way, we wind up getting to this mystery O-class planetoid, the mystery being what's O-class, in a spiral nebula. And not one but two side trips, one unintended to the Kazon kidnapping there, and also to this AI show. Wait, a Kazon? Yes, it's not the first time we've seen them in Prodigy, remember? The kids, you might eye roll, but the kids remember them as their, I don't know, traumatizing kidnapper, the guy, the people that got them to Tars Lamora. So, this is really a chock-full section, an act 2, if you will, of adventures. We're in the midst of the season arc, but yet we're having some standalone feels here. So, we got 4 episodes worth of kudos, starting off with Observer's Paradox, which, of course, is a real term that refers to the skew or the inaccuracy of the point of view of an observer that you would otherwise think was a perfect view, right? So, in the writer's chair, we've got Jennifer Muro. She was a staff writer this season. New, this is her first script on the show. She's had a decade in animation writing, though, including Star Wars Force of Destiny and animatics in the art departments before that. Meanwhile, our director this episode is Roland Lee, been directing animation since 2019. By far, Prodigy is the highest profile series there. And having been an art department storyboard artist on series including the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And a co-directing credit on this episode with Andrew L. Schmidt, who is an Emmy and Annie nominated director, animator, 30 years in the business, including directing 14 titles for the Hagemans Trollhunter series, all right? This is his 5th credit on Prodigy out of 7 eventually. And then episode 206, Imposter syndrome, which of course is that term for when we have feelings of inadequacy, like we're not really living up to our job title or to the training we're supposed to have had. In this case, of course, we've referring to a bunch of hollow duplicates of these kids. Now, this one, the writing credit is, yay, Diandra Pendleton Thomas. She was the season 1 writer's assistant on Picard, and then she was hired on to be a staff writer here on Prodigy. She's had 5 solo or shared credits in season 1, and this is the first of her season 2, among 4 eventually. In the director's chair, we've got Sung Shin, who directed 9 of the 20 episodes from season 1. This is his 2nd title for season 2. Been in animation since 2014, coming up through the storyboard artist path. Then we've got 207, The Fast and the Curious, which of course is not only a little takeoff on the Fast and the Furious film series, and here with the race and Dal's go fast line, but also the Curious, yeah, taking a look at what's behind the curtain. Our writer this week is Erin McNamara. She had been script coordinator on season 1. This is her first staff job. She's staff writer this season, but she'd had her first credit with part 1 of the finale last season. This week, we've got a co-credit again in the director's chair. We've got Sung Shin again for the 2nd time in a row, but co-directing with Sean Bishop. This is Sean's first directing slot for Prodigy. It's going to be the first of 5 this season. And he comes, though, from almost 30 years as a storyboard artist, book 4, coming into the big chair, directing with a Scooby-Doo and Guess Who movie. And then the 4th episode of this chunk of 4 we're looking at is There in Beauty No Truth. Of course, it's the show about Medusans and other non-corporeals. It's a takeoff on the original title, the original series episode that gave us Medusans, and the idic symbol is There in Truth No Beauty. And our writer this week, another successful ladder climber, Keith Sweet II. He was assistant to the producers on season 1. Now he's got a staff job and his first writing credit ever. Meanwhile, our directors, another co-credit this week, Roland Lee and Andrel Schmidt, doing exactly what they did before on episode 6. That's just 2 prior. Imposter Syndrome. Woo! So now we've got 4 episodes worth of little things, big things. Here we go. Big things, star dates. Again, they're using very specific dates. Not every episode, but they're really framing it. And in the mold of the TNG DS9 Voyager Classic series, it's the 5-digit 1,000 star dates to a year, units to a year. So that means that these 4 shows are all happening in 2384, right? From stardate 61865.1 to stardate 61881.4. Or in 2384, that's just November 12th to November 18th. 6 days. All right, in our first of 4 here in 205 and Imposter Syndrome, it's really handy that Janeway or the EMH, nobody seems to have internal sensors tracking these kids with alerts. Oh, and by the way, little thing, a Fibonacci sequence. You know what? That's a real thing. It's the sequence that follows the rule where every number is equal to the sum of the preceding 2 numbers. So you start off with 0, 0, 1. Well, 0 and 1 is 1. So 0, 1, 1. Okay, 1 and 1 are 2. Okay. 1 and 2 are 3. 2 and 3 are 5. And you go and so on and so on. The sequence apparently did not follow a Fibonacci sequence. Oh, and also in episode 5 here, Imposter Syndrome, we got some good stuff. Little things, but a lot of cool things. Now, a lot of folks have been talking about what's in the shelf of Janeway's ready room on the Voyager A, right? All those artifacts, all the stuff. But one thing, her Academy diploma is on the wall. It gives her the middle initial M, which we've never had before in screen canon. The books give her middle initial as M at times, and one even says that it stands for Margaret. I mean, what else does it stand for? That's very cool. What no one is talking about, though, is that pinkish white object at the extreme right, or the furthest away from camera. So Aaron Walke tells me that is actually, no, it's not needlepoint, but it's actually the graphic logo, the current graphic logo, for the city of Bloomington, Indiana, which, of course, is Janeway's hometown. It's her birthplace, and it's where the real-life Janeway statue is today. Oh, and this is a big thing. I think this is the longest disrupted quantum timeline episode story that Star Trek's ever had. I mean, longest in ongoing time, right? It's the universe, their universe, is barely stitched together right now. It's fraying rapidly. I mean, kudos to all the theoreticals that are going on here, and to the Doctor cooking up a frequency stabilizer to keep Gwyn insulated from it all. Okay, little thing, but fun. In The Fast and the Curious, we find out that the Cairo, the USS Cairo, yes, NCC 42136, you can clearly read the hull, is one of those crash ships on the planet. So we find out that it was not destroyed in a Dominion encounter, after all, back during the war, the way DS9 guessed at the missing ship. But it was lost here, right? And yes, the Cairo was also Jellicoe's ship that he was in command of at the time he departed to come over to the Enterprise and temporarily take command from Picard. In chain of command, of course. Yes. Oh, there are 5 lights. Oh, big thing. I mean, forget temporal mechanics. This is Retcon 101, and what a great one it is, of all things. The Chamuzi, the artifact that Chakotay leaves with Catherine, when he leaves in the flashback, it's sitting on her ready room shelf there. I love how this is part of, well, Prodigy's ability to rehabilitate some of the ickier parts of Voyager because they were using a Native American consultant to get it right for Chakotay when all they were doing was unwittingly being saddled to a fake, an infamous fake in Hollywood, a fake Indian consultant, Jamaica Highwater, whose real name was Jackie Marks, whose father was Jewish and Eastern European. Chimuzé was all part of that background that was a little cringy because Jamaica Highwater advised everything in Voyager to not use, and anything in Star Trek, don't use actual cultural items and terms and processes from actual tribes, from actual native peoples. You gotta fictionalize everything or else you're offending someone. Well, of course, the offense was in that everything was fictionalized. And here they've retconned Chakotay's biofile. Now, everything like his serial number, a lot of bits and pieces here are for real. But they add in the fact, which we never got in Voyager, that his people were descended from the Onotepe rubber tree, the rubber tree people. That was Kolopak back in Tattoo, season 2 of Voyager. But the Ometepe people and the Nicaragua people are both real groups. In fact, the Nicaragua, they were the people who, in all the migration down from the ice bridge of Alaska down through North America into Central America through Mexico, the Nicaragua were the people who controlled Nicaragua, Ometeps, until the Spanish conquests. And then the Ometep do live still on the large island that's in the middle of huge Lake Nicaragua. You can see it. It's made up of 2 volcanoes. It's very cool. They're specifying that. Now, the other thing that's cool about this that went right by, not from real life, but from Star Trek canon, is Chakotay's birthplace. Now, originally, the whole point of having Dorvan 4, Dorvan 5, and the Native American people that Picard had to relocate near the end of Next Generation, that was all supposed to be setting up the vibe to be called Chakotay's birthplace. As Voyager was there were a lot of roots being placed in Next Gen and in DS9 both to kind of launch the background of the characters and the mood that Voyager starts off in, the whole Maquis thing. The Maquis were a creation for Voyager and just backfilled, especially on DS9. Never would have had to deal with it. Was not a creation of the series. I digress. The point was, Chakotay's birthplace was never tied down, even though that was the original intention. Because Dorvan 5 on TNG was said to have been founded in 2350. Well, that's like 20 plus years after the year that Chakotay would have been born. It's hard to have been born in a colony that wasn't there yet. So Jerry Taylor, right, co-creator of Voyager, godmother of the Janeway character there, both of them from Bloomington, Indiana, she basically did an early day retcon and came up with a planet named Trebus. And that's in her novel Pathways, which, like Mosaic for Janeway itself, was her attempt to bring in a lot of background in a novel form that the show could draw from. Some of it was, and after she left and retired, a lot of it wasn't. Now, current sources are looking at the Dorvan 5 notes and the Trebus in a novel only, not on screen, nothing on screen, and saying, gosh, we have a dilemma. No, we didn't. In real time, Jerry was retconning the problem and solving it and fixing it. But nothing on screen until now. All that to say, when those 3 or 4 little words fly by, Trebus, which, yes, was over in the demilitarized zone along the Cardassian border, Trebus is now officially Chakotay's birth planet. The more you know. And this is why we had a cetacean ops on the Voyager A. It only took, 25 episodes in to give it some relevance here? Did you notice how deep it was, though? 6 to 8 decks deep, at least. Put a pin in that. Little thing, gotta say, thank you, episode 206. We've never had a Class O planetary classification before. Ecthes planet? Interesting. Oh, little thing, or is it? So Ovidia 4, right? The non-corporeals is said to be made up of, yes, Medusans and the Calamarain, who were the non-corporeals that Q oppressed until he lost his powers, and then they came after him, and then he got his powers back, and he went back after them, and had to be walled off from each other. Thank you, Picard. So the Calamarain, but also the Paxans. Paxans, non-corporeals. Episode clues, Next Generation, remember? They're xenophobic. They're isolationist. The Enterprise D crew stumbles into them. They do a redo, wipe memories, and then, dang those curious Starfleet people. They figure out the mystery again and have to apologize and be wiped again. And Data is the only one who carries the memory. My question is, if the Paxans were so xenophobic, but just 10, 20 years before this, if they were so isolationist, why are they openly mixing on this planet with these other non-corporeals and saying, hey, everybody, here we are. Read our travel brochure. It's us. Well, I would say, if you could have Vosh Couture, if you could have emotional Vulcans, I think every culture has its contraries, as we'd say about Chakotay. So I'm saying this is the contrary Paxans. So yes, you can have some who have left homeworld and willingly embraced some folks who are, atypically the same as them, atypically in their own worlds. Makes sense. I'm good with it. And by the way, these Ovidians, I mean, is that the term for them collectively when they give up their planetary homes? I really get the vibes, do you? From the Sargon and Hainok, fake android bodies built for their essences, all the way to, sure, the Golem bodies on Picard, for Picard and Data. But did you notice, is that Dr. Geiger's cellular regeneration and entertainment center they're using to get it done? From DS9? I kid. Okay, little thing here in 206. On Ecthy's planet, right, in the Fast and the Curious, the atmosphere is said to be 17% oxygen, 81% nitrogen. Well, how breathable is that? Now, on Earth normal, remember, class M planet, oxygen, nitrogen, atmosphere. Earth normal is 78% nitrogen and 20% oxygen. So a couple of points, 2-3 points off. How critical is that? Well, OSHA, of all things, workplace safety, says on Earth that anything below 19.5% oxygen is deficient. So 17, doable, but borderline. Oh, but big thing. Well, maybe it's not a big thing to you, but it's a big thing to me. After 37 years, we finally get it on screen. Not just in words, but depicted. Parisi squares. Did you notice? And it turns out that the squares are not just lines lined off on a field, but actual shifting levels of square areas. Different levels, like almost like, I don't know, controlled, flat, instead of being rocky and pointed areas of the Genesis planet. That was wild. What's really going on? Are they controlled? Are they pre-programmed? Is it totally a random pattern? I thought they had the ball, they had the mallets, they had the team, but we never seen the guts of what Parisi Squares is. Once again, animation, Lower Decks, Prodigy take the lead in finally giving us Star Trek world bits and pieces that we never got before. Thank you. Thank you for the gap filling, Prodigy. Finally. But having said all that, I do still have some questions, such as in 205. What is that? A mare Murph? It was adorable. It's apparently not permanent. It apparently only happens when Murph hits ocean water. It was adorable. I'm calling it a mare Murph. And then in 206, the kids make their hologram duplicates, but they say their holograms are built of subroutines guaranteed to pass life scans? Say what? I mean, talk about deep fakes. In 207, a Hanonian pickle? Really? From Hanon 4? I don't, you know what? I don't recall that the giant land snake planet where Voyager's crew was dumped off when the Kazon hijacked the ship. Don't recall any of those Neolithic humanoid natives dilifying cucumbers, do you? But in The Fast and the Curious in 207, I don't know, if I had been hijacked by some mystery drone and dragged out of a warp corridor, heading into a planet for a near crash landing, I don't know that my bridge would be quite so calm and quiet while that was all happening against our will. Especially with these kids. Just seemed oddly quiet. Oddly. Also, question, I don't quite understand how the Ovidians, the non-corporeals, how their planetary rings decay into the atmosphere and then provide unique hydrocarbon chains and use energy into matter. Was that for maintenance of their bodies? Was that to create them or help them evolve? I'm not, to get solid sensory, or I'm not sure. But I do know biotransference is a thing in Warhammer. Just ask a Necron. Okay, one last question in our final one here this week in Is There in Beauty No Truth? They're running the race of Nazimon, the sense of fear for life. Is that an anagram for, I don't know, a certain mega corporation within big retail that we all also might fear for its AI voraciousness of our privacy and our, it just made me think. Oh, and among the questions, an answer. Yes, a sonic toilet. Okay, favorite lines. Oh, listen, this was lovely. So well delivered in 206. Again, not the captain. Oh, Ella Purnell doing her Gwen. That was beautiful. Beautiful marriage of delivery and art. And then, Is There in Beauty No Truth? Will I feel anything? You will feel everything. Great moment, great delivery, and yet it furthers along the whole mood of that episode for a lot of the story. Is this going to be a wonderful, benevolent thing or a chillingly bizarre danger moment? It was a great way to prolong that mood. Now, here's a line that's not a line, but I had to talk about it. We started off with a bang, but these 4 episodes, not one, I'm a doctor, not a aphorism. So that means our rate has fallen off here. Now we're only 2 out of 8 episodes. Come on, gang, get with it. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm overindulging favorite lines here, but the best one from Fast and the Curious. Your transwarp tyranny is over. I mean, way to go, Zero. I love how the more an adversary is elevated to good old-fashioned villain status, so too does the dialogue of everyone around them, and you'll wind up with some good old-fashioned chew the scenery talk. Okay, our cast and characters over these 4 shows. Just some highlights, because there's so much, right? So Jankum, he's done with his nice civility, which is a little bit of relief. And you know what? Still, though, growth spurt. He's still far more civil now than he ever was in season 1. He's come a long way. I mean, he's still parting and combing his hair. And Jillian is the name of our whale crew member on the Voyager A. Of course, it's named Jillian in an homage to Jillian Taylor, who was the original whale scientist brought back from the past into the future to help save the whales. Double goody, she's voiced by Bonnie Gordon. Now, Ekthi is an interesting Kazon name. This is a Kazon Oglamar. He's Oglamar, which was said to be one of the weaker Kazon sects back when Voyager was first passing through. But hey, if you can resurrect the Ferengi after the way they started in TNG, you can resurrect the Kazon. Now, on the Voyager A, Dr. Noam is actually developing a really unique personality. He's taking on a bit of a McCoyisms here and there, and I love that his uniform is a little bit different. It's a little unique with a different kind of yoke and some padding here, some more severe stitches. You see that when you first get some close-ups. And yes, he's a counselor now and makes room for the doctor to be the EMH. What's more, we actually get a personal bit here that his favorite, or one of his favorite, holodeck relaxation moments is a tropical island paradise resort. What do you do? Read Neelix's journals from the Delta Quadrant? I don't know. I wasn't expecting that. I just wonder if that is going to surface again in later episodes. Meanwhile, Tysus is one smart Andorian. I mean, yeah, he fell for the fake holo kids like everyone else at the beginning, but then he was the first. He was quick on the trigger to figure out that the infinity was gone and how to track it. Now, I love seeing the doctor, love having Bob Picardo in there doing the voicing, right? But here's something I noticed in the first 4 episodes and increasingly so now. But is it just me, or is the doctor's generally softer, slower delivery? Well, is that a function of Picardo's delivery, or is that just a nod to the pace of the animation? Well, it is fun to see the EMH is still doing his holonovels, but it's kind of interesting to see what a doormat he is for those kids. I feel like I'm in a 50s sitcom. They get away with murder, and he's clueless. I guess that was a chapter that got left out of his family role-play hologram program, huh? And what's even more intriguing here are Vulcan Cadet Magel choosing between Nova Squad and Zero right out of the gate. Oh boy. Oh boy. And we keep getting these tantalizing little clues. Magel and Zero. Magel and Zero. What is she going to think? What did she think when she saw him in his Ovidian body by the end? Gang, I tell you, between T'Lyn on Lower Decks and Magel here, I feel like we're going to captivate and capture a whole new generation of anime kids into Trek. Or we can only hope. And you know, looking at Rock, of all the duplicated character kids, it's the Rocks that overcome their distrust and their jealousy and their competition and work together. I mean, is that like not a great use of science as the universal bonding agent again? I mean, how handy for the good of the group to have the science rocks work together. And it's so core to the overall basic purity of the whole Prodigy tone and message, don't you think? And then, apart from Murmurf, it was so funny to see him be the food snitch. I mean, it added a lot of little comedy bits to that. But you know, is he just keeping medieval sketch comedy alive there, or is something happening with him with this food thing? Are we in for another metamorphosis? Keep watching. Oh, and Gwen. She's in a vulnerable place here, but you know, showing the guts and also the intuition of a hero to keep fiddling with her quantum stabilizer, right? She's overcome a bad place, and yet she's got to push on. She's got to press on. And she's facing down the existential threat, the ever-present prospect of quantum erasure. Plus her simple line, "Where in Stovacor is our ship?" It's so revealing. Among all those millions of cultures she's familiar with, a Klingon's right in there. And wow, Zero in The Fast and the Curious. His sacrifice? First, it was bad enough with the sacrifice of losing his limbs and then smashing. I didn't know I jaw dropped. I did not know if they were going to write out the character, if they were going to wipe him out. Or if something was going to happen to his case and it would be cracked and he couldn't be, faced down by all of his friends for the insanity factor of the Medusans. I literally, the most gobsmacked moment of the series so far. What a don't tell me animation can't convey emotion, that animation can't have moments like that. It was just wow. And think, the audience of this show, that's got to have that sacrificial moment, that fear that we've lost someone, and then even it's not so much a cheat when you put people through the ringer like that. You could say, oh, of course they're not going to kill him off. No, when you're in that moment, that packs a wallop for the kids and the adults. I'm telling you, my jaw literally dropped. But then moving forward, what is this? A new form? Is this permanent? I mean, first Murph and now Zero, and then his sensory pig out. Well, it rivals the all-human Spock on Strange New Worlds. I mean, I'm already watching his link with Majel, but then whoa, he gets a whole Data got an emotion chip moment here. Is it an arc? Is it going to be ongoing? How long can he sustain this? Meanwhile, that leaves our two leads on both sides, Janeway and Dal. I don't feel like either one of them had a real spotlight moment. They were obviously involved in the plot, obviously go along. I feel like this was a quiet segment of the season for both of them. Again, very much involved, but still, their breakout moments are yet to come. We got over half the season to go. I'm watching. So here we have our second batch of 4 episodes. And what a trail. We kind of start with the middle of this hardcore, hard beating arc series, but then we wind up veering off and having a couple of quasi standalones. They still further the overall story, but they're not quite as plot driven, and they're awesome. They're good, but we're veering into some tropey stories. Look, we got one that's the combination of the old, race show, looking at you, Voyager Drive, and then here we've got, yes, Prodigy finally succumbs. We finally have an AI story. But look, it's no proper name, no Agimus, no Vol, no Badgie, not even a Landru. I mean, what's up with that? But the evil AI trope, I loved it. And at the same time, that whole episode with the Kazon, who wasn't really what he seemed, this whole Wizard of Oz moment where you pull aside the curtain, literally was listening behind the curtain. I loved it. It was a great blending of textures. Most of all, the series is always gorgeous, right? But in this particular episode, in The Fast and the Curious, I loved the look of the ice. I thought the way it was rendered, the way it shattered, everything about the alien planet. But those scenes in the cave, the Wizard of Oz ice curtain, all of that really stood out to me. The other thing that stood out that I often don't talk about is the music and the score. The Murph seemed like there was a twittering of flutes at times with Murph when he's in the water, when he's the Murph maid. It reminds me of Stealing the Enterprise from Star Trek 3, and it's a motif that comes back. They are so good at echoing without parodying or being on the nose some of the basic ways you're used to listening to Star Trek music, bringing back the classics, especially from the movies, for all that range of tone and just underscoring what's going on here. And there's times when, no, it's not an exact copy, and I wouldn't want that. It's not even like an homage. It's just lightly in the tone. But oh, listen, I haven't talked much about the whole arc with the duplicated kids because I wanted to say I laughed out loud when we realized what was going on there. When we realized what was happening, because finally, I feel like with the duplicates and using it as a plot device, it's a perfect use here. The real ones are gonna get away while the fake ones are holograms. It's the equivalent of having the pumpkin head in your bed covered up that lets your parents think you're still asleep in bed when you've actually got up in the middle of the night and you've taken off. That's what that caper was. But the idea of using actual holograms, they weren't holograms. But this whole thing, I think it's too deep a cut for Prodigy. Maybe I can ask. But it's totally a pitch that Joe Menosky had alive for a couple of years later on during Next Generation, basically called the Q Olympics, where Q duplicates the TNG crew. And they compete against each other. And there's some galaxy-saving moment or threat that they have to deal with. But basically, it's Q making the crew face themselves and putting them through their paces in the guise of a quasi-athletic event. And it sounds insane and crazy, and guess what? They could never, ever make it work. It's one of the great Joe Menosky ideas that did not conform to a 60-minute or a 42-minute script. It never happened. But the idea of having duplicates up and down the line being faced off, I don't think Star Trek has ever comprehended that, tried to do that, or much less pull it off until now. Okay, yeah, animation helps. But just to use it in the story, I'm going to look at this whole segment, 2 or 3 episodes worth, and think that it's an homage to Joe Menosky's Never Produce Q Olympics. You're welcome. But as an echo of the AI situation where we had to buy the book Nefarious AI, we do land on, In the Cradle of Exelon, right? That was a show on Lower Decks where the AI was atypical. It was completely beneficent. You kept expecting the other shoe to drop and for it to go all evil and villainous, but it didn't. And voila, not the AI, but the planetary culture at hand. I mentioned it earlier. That's what I saw going on with our last episode here. Is there in beauty no truth? You kept waiting for the whole thing with Zero and his new body to turn sinister, didn't you? And it was there. That was kind of a creepy, the Nazov, but it didn't go there. They weren't out to, it wasn't that deadly, that chilling, that curious, because they weren't nefarious. They had no ulterior motive. And hey, they're compliant enough to use human-style planetary nomenclature. Really? Ovidia 4? These non-corporeals? Really? But seriously, in this episode, I loved this perfect balance between, potential animosity until we knew for sure, including at times what felt like travel commercials for Ovidia 4. Here are the lovely natives frolicking in the park with the soft music and the whole bit. It's very cute. Bottom line, gotta say, the theme of Zero's sacrifice, it equaled anything in live action Trek for its emotional wallop. There, I said it. Oh, and one more thing. Is the MH Doctor's holonovel character Rodrigo an homage to Bob Picardo's Alfonso?
People say to me, Alfonso, what can we do to maintain an active sex life?
Go Google it. And I guess while you are, this is as good a place as any to sign off on this second opinion. Well, that's what I thought. What about you? I'd love it if you would leave your comments below on these 4 shows. Are you ahead of me? Are you behind? Are we even, Steven? Whatever it is, what are you thinking about Prodigy? I have to feel like this is a groundswell of support that I see almost everywhere, but I want to know what you think. And while you're at it, hey, can you like and subscribe, ring the bell, do all the things? I dare you to subscribe for some thought-provoking, positive Star Trek, would you? Most of all, if you crave more Dr. Trek and the way we do things here at Trekland, I invite you to go check out all of our experiences, like Portal 47, the mini-con all year long, every month, or our Trekland Treks, the location tours around SoCal, your own unique, customized away mission. Or, sure, our live streams, Trekland Tuesdays live on Tuesday, our podcast, The Trek Files from Roddenberry, also Cadet Alice and Dr. Trek Watch Prodigy, and yes, Season 2 will be back soon. Season 1 Prodigy is all up right now with the lovely and talented Cadet Alice. That's my granddaughter. Hey, look, check it all out over at LarryNemecek.com. Also, our T. Blubbock store. And the Cameo system, I will do videos for you. I'll do Dr. McCoy if you want. Whatever it is, check it all out at LarryNemecek.com. And we'll see you next time. Truck well, everybody.